Hello my loyal companions, welcome back to the channel. With the new Rogue Switchblade coming into Rogue Company, it is time that I update my tier list to give you guys a good idea of what is meta currently within Rogue Company. The format of this video is going to be slightly different because I'm going to cover the rogues both in how good they are for demolition and how good they are for respawn modes such as King of the Hill, TDM or Strikeout. So therefore this video is going to be kind of two tier lists for you to look at and get your hands on so you know exactly what is going to be best for whatever game mode you prefer. But now though guys, if you do go on to enjoy the video or you appreciate the educational content coming out from this channel, make sure you drop a like and subscribe. For now though, let's get into it. Starting off then with Anvil, he's a great rogue in demolition for retake strategy, so allowing your enemies to plant the bomb and then going in to reclaim that bomb site using his shield to sneakily defuse behind it. He also has a great weapon for holding down lines of sight, survivability with tenacity, life drain, and the potential for 2 active protection systems, and that flash immunity in the current meta of flashbangs being used very heavily is really viable. He does have the few cons of if that shield does get destroyed, he becomes slightly useless, and he is often a very big target for the enemies to get down before they actually go for that bomb plant. When it comes to respawn modes, that LMG plus life drain and headstrong do make him really hard to deal with for anybody, and he can lock down a site or objective really well and hold down a lane for a good amount of time that you're sitting on the objective. His main issue is that he can get outgunned by more aggressive rogues and players like SMGs because the LMG isn't that great, but he will often also get util spammed out, so you have to be making sure you have protection systems as much as possible. For Anvil though, he is going to fall in demolition into an A tier rogue, and in respawn modes he's also going to be an A tier rogue. Chaac is up next, and he definitely benefits in the current high aggression state of Rogue Company where flashbangs and breaching and pushing onto site quickly and trying to get a pick is really prevalent. Chaac definitely suits into this mold. He's a very aggressive pushing rogue with great survivability, and in demolition, that chance to self-revive is super important in a one life mode where your life matters so much more. His passive also, where he can roll on the ground and has additional HP when he does go down, means he can get out of danger to get that self-revive off or get manual res by a teammate, which is actually really valuable and I see happen so often currently with Chaacs. His main issues are that he does need teammates to match his aggression and cover him, and he is pretty susceptible to utility with no tenacity. In respawn modes, this is pretty much the same, except his perk set just allows him to frag out even more. With life drain, replenish, and that D40C just being such a beamer, he has great multi-kill potential. He's amazing for 1v1s and 1v2s, and those flashbangs are super prevalent currently at helping get people off of the objective. Only main issue with Chaac in respawn modes is that self-res isn't as useful, but you can use the ability for the additional health instead, which is very viable. When it comes to Chaac in demolition, he is also an A tier rogue, but when we move into respawn modes, he is definitely top tier S tier. Dahlia comes in next, and you guys know that link revive in demolition is super valuable. The strategic advantage you can get by linking to a Scorch or Anvil or any other rogue is super good, and grabbing lifeline offers really quick reses that gets your teammates back into the action sooner. She has a great perk set with tenacity and that lifeline and stalker as well, and her weapons did just get a buff, meaning her MXR is pretty strong. She has great utility for demolition too, with the grenade for picks and the smoke grenade for covering angles, which is really good. Only issue is that she's only available to revive one person. Her only main issue is that she can only link revive one person, as opposed to Saint, for example, who could revive anybody. In respawn mode, she isn't quite as good. In the chaos of respawn modes, she can get those quick reses off, and they can be quite clutch, but for the most part, her weapons don't have the best kill pressure compared to some of the counterparts that are in the game currently. Teammates often bleed out instantly in respawn modes too, which means that revive isn't as prevalent, and a lot of the time you just don't want revives to respawn modes, so she isn't that useful. In terms of her ranking in demolition, she is definitely an S tier rogue still. She's picked up almost every single game, but respawn modes, she feels more into that B tier. Dallas comes in next, and I've always raved about how Dallas is one of the highest skill cap rogues within the game. This is both a big drawback for him, but also if you can pull him off well, a really good benefit. His guns are extremely good at beaming people, and that snap reveal potential in demolition is really valuable. Being able to find one person, isolate them, and kill them is really good. For this reason, he also has great flank pressure and 1v1 pressure if he's played correctly. Only issue with Dallas though is you need to not rely on that snap too much, especially with something like Ronin in the game now who's immune to everything. She can counter into you pretty hard. When it comes to respawn modes though, if you're good with his weapons, he is pretty strong, but for the most part, he isn't as valuable in a respawn mode. His ability isn't that useful because the chaos, you kind of know where everybody is. The low magazine count of his weapons does mean it's kind of hard to get multi-kills in respawn modes, and if he does get pushed, he kind of does suffer because he has long-range designed weapons. so you may get outgunned. In terms of his ranking for Demolition, he will be A tier. I do think he has a lot of viability there, but in respawn modes, I think he falls more into a C tier. Dima is up next with a few changes to his kit and ability in the most recent update. His ultimate is absolutely deadly in confined spaces, and if you can get the right angle on that to get it off, it can be really, really good and even kill people with tenacity if you get enough clusters on them. He has solid weapons for different ranges, maps, and situations. Although they aren't necessarily the best in their class, they are very good regardless. He also has EMPs, which I think personally are super underrated. Only main issue is he doesn't have a lot of survivability, and often that ultimate can be wasted or easily avoided. When it comes to respawn modes though, his ultimate is much easier to land in the chaotic sort of nature of those modes, especially as people tend to sit on the objective. It's kind of a free ultimate or forces them off of it. Enemies are most likely to stack together as well in respawn modes, which gives good multi-kill pressure. He also has a really good perk set for those respawn modes too. The biggest issue, and this kind of does span across both Demolition and respawn modes, is that other rogues kind of just do his job better, Kestrel and Switchblade being two main ones, and he doesn't really have a lot of good util at holding objectives in respawn mode. Therefore, I put him as a B tier for both Demolition and respawn modes across the board. I think he's solid, but not necessarily the best, or I think there are people that can do his job better. Glitch comes in next, our favorite hacker within Rogue Company, and that hack in Demolition can be game-changing. Good glitches, putting off hacks at the right time, can open up so much for your team, whether it's just getting the bomb plant down, stopping a retake, or just disrupting the enemy long enough for you to push them safely without getting utilitied. He also has great intel and flank pressure with that device out, and his flashbang push potential mean he's great for isolated 1v1s as well on that flank. Technically, he does counter every single rogue within the game as well, because you can hack them and force them not to be able to use their abilities, so this is more of a minor point. His main drawback in Demolition is he kind of does rely on enemies having good, valuable hack equipment, or finding enemies that you do want to be hacking, whereas in some cases, they may have rogues that doesn't really matter that much, or they would have already used their utility, so hacking them doesn't provide too much either. In respawn modes though, I do not think he is as viable at all. I think the flashbangs and hacking potential is a good thing if you're setting up a breach onto the objective, but beyond that, it doesn't have a lot of use compared to Demolition. His flank pressure is definitely diminished in respawn modes because of how fast-paced it is, and he doesn't necessarily have the best guns in his class to offer good fighting potential, and he can often get outgunned. Overall though, I think Glitch definitely falls into the A tier for me in terms of Demolition. I think he's very, very good, but C tier again for that respawn mode. Kestrel comes in next, and although Kestrel did get a few small nerfs in the most recent update, she is still absolutely on top of her game, and I do not think this changed her too much, just kind of slowed her down in how quickly she starts to dominate you. In Demolition, that ability is a free kill if used properly almost every single time, with great flank pressure and the Riptide being a top 3 gun in the game. She is definitely in a great spot. The survivability with stims, 1v1 pressure, and the little bit of cash she gets from her passive does lead to a lot of snowboarding, meaning if you're on a good game, you can be on a really good game very quickly, just through economy. She is susceptible to util, which is really her only big drawback if you get naded or picked off by a big ultimate. In respawn mode, she is equally as strong. Really, all those same qualities apply to respawn modes. She is just in a super good state. She does have to just keep moving though, because there's no real point in her sitting on the objective. You may as well go around looking for picks. All in all though, Kestrel is going to be S tier for both Demolition and respawn modes. I think she is a must pick every single game, or at least a must ban. Lancer comes in next, and you guys know I love Lancer. I think in Demolition, it takes a really smart player to play Lancer properly in Demolition. Respawn modes, not as much, but Demolition, it does require a lot of thought, positioning, and knowledge. Her flank pressure is incredible. Even just the threat of it, not even having to go ahead with it, can be really strong. She can pull off clutches really, really easily, and her ability is great for getting to early position. Her biggest drawbacks in Demolition is that she's often camped for, and she does have to rely on good intel or communication from a teammate. In respawn modes though, she really doesn't have any drawbacks. Her speed and flank pressure is great. Her passive allows her to just go from kill to kill, and adding life drain to that is really, really good. And her perk set overall is just insane. Her rankings put her in the B tier for Demolition, because I think that skill cap is quite high, and S tier for respawn modes, because I do not think that skill cap even exists. Mack is up next, and Mack has had a good amount of time to settle into the game and his meta currently. The Conviction is a good gun and can lock down certain areas of the map really, really well. You can stall for a good 15 seconds with his ultimate. By putting that down, it forces people not to push into you, or if they do, they're basically a free kill. And his passive gives good early advantage into some utility, like grenades that won't kill him off the rip, and just survivability throughout the later rounds also. His main issues in demo is that his ability is really hard to get off, and no tenacity as a frontliner does leave him kind of susceptible to nades later on. In respawn modes, I think he performs slightly better. His Conviction, again, great for fighting with that passive, leads to multi-kills quite easily, and his ability to hold an objective is really, really good. Again, only drawback is he's kind of susceptible to utility. In terms of ranking, he sits in the B tier for demolition, but does rank up in the A tier for respawn mode. Phantom is up next, and she is a dominant sniper within the game. Her great one-shot pick potential is really, really good, although the high skill cap of this can lead to a very high risk, high reward. Her passive is actually one of the things I think she is best for. That delayed health regen offers a lot for your team to push on, or for you to win trades later on, and Nano Smoke and Sticker Sensors also offer good reveal and map pressure. Her biggest drawback in demolition is that those sniper picks you get, especially off rip, can easily be revived, and they don't always translate to pressure moving forward. In respawn modes though, it's kind of the same thing. People do bleed out more, which means that pick potential is a bit better, and that Grievous Wounds is great for stalling out enemies pushing if you land some body shots, but she does have a very high risk, high reward, and she's not always the most solid pickup. For those reasons, assuming you are a good sniper who can hit consistent shots, she falls into a B tier for demolition and an A tier for respawn modes, again, assuming you can hit those shots. Ronin is up next with some really good buffs, particularly to her passive, which allows her to be immune to all reveals, which opens up a lot of opportunities, especially in demolition. She can really fit into any situation. She's a jack of all trades, as I've always said, with good weapons, good utility, and duelist potential, with great versatility of her ability as well, whether you want to use it aggressively or defensively. I think Ronin has a great place in demolition. Respawn mode, she is pretty solid again, but doesn't offer anything particularly unique. People not always expect the ballistic knife in some angles, and good kill pressure and survivability overall with tenacity, but she doesn't have a lot of zone control that really makes her valuable for objective-based game modes like in the respawn mode. That doesn't mean she's not useful though, and she will rank S tier for demolition and A tier in respawn modes. Again, doesn't offer anything specifically good for those respawn modes, but she's solid to have if you just need a rogue to fit the gap. Saint is up next as our other healer. Dahlia ranked quite highly, but I do not think Saint is as valuable currently. He's a solid medic with global revive pressure, which he does have as an advantage over Dahlia, which puts him good on longer range maps. His weapons also offer good long range poke. He has a good perk set for his own survivability, and his passive does allow teammates to get back into the fight with 80 HP as opposed to 30. His revive, however, is quite slow and can be easily interrupted, destroyed, or shot. In respawn modes, I do not think his revive pressure is that useful, as again, people often bleed out, or their drone gets shot very quickly. If you can get the revive off, it is super valuable in respawn modes, but again, it's very, very unlikely, and he doesn't quite have the best weapons to fit with this fast-paced respawn mode. Therefore, he's going to fit into the B tier for demolition, and in respawn modes, he's going to fall into the C tier. Scorch comes in next, and with the newest rogue Switchblade coming in, she actually offers a really solid counter into her if she's giving you trouble. She has great survivability with tenacity, headstrong, and fire immunity, meaning she's almost the tankiest rogue in the game currently. She has great kill pressure with her ability and interesting plays that you can do around that fire immunity. She's hard to get off of bomb or particular rat spots because you can't do a lot to kill her, and she can just pop up with an SLC and kill you pretty easy. Her biggest drawbacks are her lack of range and that she is kind of map dependent. In respawn modes though, her survivability is great for staying on the objective, great at following up on a team's push, and she's amazing in 1v1 and 1v2s, but particularly sitting on that objective and not being able to get off it is a really good benefit for you and your team in respawn modes. Only issue is you kind of have to be on the objective to get the most benefit out of her. Therefore, in terms of her ranking, she'll fall into a B tier for demolition and an S tier for respawn modes. The young archer Seeker comes in next, and the Sahara is definitely a top 3 weapon, meaning he has a very good, solid gunplay within the game currently. He's great intel with the bow as well, being able to reveal multiple people along bomb sites. His sticky sensors, which offer good map pressure, and a bounce nade, which when you upgrade it, its damage can kill through tenacity, which is one of the only things that can do this. His biggest drawback in demolition specifically is that his bow does give away his position on the minimap, which is very valuable intel in demolition. In respawn modes, he has good kill pressure with the Sahara, multi-kills with that life drain, but doesn't really have a lot to hold the objective and no real survivability when we think about it. So he's a little bit lackluster in respawn modes, but in terms of demolition, he will fall into the S tier, and in terms of respawn modes, he'll fall into the B tier. Sigrid is up next, and she is a very annoying rogue to deal with, but if you learn how to deal with her, she's not the end of the world. In demolition, she has extremely good 1v1 pressure with that shield, almost impossible to lose a 1v1 if you know what you're doing. She has lots of use for the shield, whether it be bomb plant, defuse, revives. With lifeline as well, she can get those revives off kind of nicely. She also has great survivability with tenacity and stims, meaning it's very hard for you to kill her, unless you are using some form of zone control util like an incendiary grenade. In respawn modes, those skills also translate with a great perk set and weapons for respawns, great breaching of an objective, and she can hold an objective for a decent amount of time. She's not necessarily the most high priority in respawn modes because she isn't as strong when that shield isn't available, and you're often going to get spam utiled off of site. Therefore, she's going to fall into the A tier for demolition if you don't get a chance to pick her up before she's banned, and a B tier for respawn modes. Switchblade is the newest rogue to enter Rogue Company, and a lot of you are already calling that she's OP. Whilst I can see her getting toned down a little bit, I do not think she is that ridiculously strong. I think there is a skill gap to learn with her past just shooting the rocket at people. Of course, in Demolition, that ultimate can almost guarantee a kill or zone control. If you want a few tips on Switchblade, you can check out my video from the other day where I go over 5 tips for Switchblade that may be really valuable for you. Her passive, which gives her a bit of speed, can also allow for early power positions. She's a very aggressive potential as well with a great perk set, so as long as you're being aggressive and your team can match that, you're going to do really well on Switchblade, but you do need that teammate follow-up. In respawn modes, I think she's even better though, with Replenish and Life Drain as 2 perks she has available, meaning she can just bounce between kill and kill and kill really easily. Her ultimate in the middle of the chaos where people stack a lot in respawn modes is great, and the 24S in my opinion is a great weapon. Her main issue for me is that she does require a lot of economy to reach her full potential. I think she is kind of limited by the amount of money she gets. So you better be having a good game if you really want to crack into her in the early rounds of respawn mode. For me though, she's going to fall into an A tier for Demolition, but she will be S tier for respawn mode. Talon comes in next, and Talon is a great rogue. He is the Deadeye, which is a top 3 weapon. He's great at revealing certain locations around the map, whether that be a flank or an angle that you want to have info on. He also has an insane perk set with Tenacity and Life Drain, which are really, really solid, and tracker rounds as well, which I think is super underrated. He's a great aggressive and defensive utility, whether you're using the flashbang to push or the C4 to save your own life. Only issue is that he is easy to miss someone on the dart, especially when you're aimed down sight and you can't see your minimap. And he's not the most reliable intel rogue, where you have to wait for someone to cross into your path of the dart to actually see anybody. In respawn modes, that perk set is really good, as I said, and the radar can be put on the objective to see who's around it, which is very, very good info. The only real issue is that other rogues can kind of just do his job better in respawn modes, so you may not be seeing a lot of him. For me, Talon reaches the A tier in Demolition, and he will fall into the B tier for respawn mode. Fixer is up next, and of course that Deadeye, again, being a top 3 weapon, is super valuable, and with Replenish being added to his kit, great snipers with the tier can put off great kill pressures as well, like you can on Phantom. His thermal vision, of course, being one of the strongest things in the game, being able to see through smoke in Demolition is super valuable, and the slow effect from a passive can actually be minorly annoying at helping you just lock down those few extra kills. He is hard countered by intel rogues who know what they're doing, and they can often get a bit confident, can Fixers, when they're sitting in their smoke, so you do got to be careful not to get too complacent when you're on him. In respawn modes, that smoke and thermal vision is really great in the chaos of everything that's going on. He's also really good at trading at long ranges with bounce back. He often wins long range engagements because of the nature of his weapon. His main issue is that when that ability is on cooldown, he's kind of just another Talon, doesn't really fit into it, but that ability does definitely bump him up higher than the way Talon does. He's only really viable for longer range maps, however, in my opinion. In terms of his ranking, he'll fit into the S tier for Demolition, being super strong, and A tier for respawn modes as a solid pick, but again, you kind of need that ability. But ultimately is going to be Trench, who has a really good buff now that his barbed wire can do damage. His defensive utility is amazing with great setup for a bomb site using those APS. The trip mines are super underrated in terms of getting free picks, and the trip wire itself, the barbed wire, can do some really good damage or force people to waste their time or utility to get rid of it. Only real issue is that he's not as useful as that utility is wasted, and his weapons are only okay, but the amount of time he can stall definitely puts him high up. In respawn mode, he's fantastic at holding an objective, but he doesn't have a lot of breach to actually get on the objective. If you can get in there, you basically kind of lock it down for a good amount of time, and again, his weapons aren't really the best. In terms of his ranking, he's going to fit into the A tier for both Demolition and respawn mode. Vi is the last one here on our list. In Demolition, again, very similar to Trench, she has great defensive zone control. She can cause permanent damage to enemies' health, which really gives your team an advantage because they'll be running around with less health even if you die. She's great at stalling out enemy advancements. I think in total she can stall out for almost 30 or 40 seconds on an objective using her various zone control. And she has just great retake control or stopping a retake. Only main issue is that she has no real survivability for a defender who wants to be up in the front line. For respawn modes, I think she's also really solid, not quite as good because again, she can't really hold an objective too well. She can just stop them kind of getting to it for a while, which, whilst useful, isn't always the best, but she can be really effective at getting people off of an objective by spamming utility. Her main drawback in respawn modes is that the permanent health damage isn't as useful because again, they just die and respawn and then they're full health once again. In terms of her ranking, she's going to fit into the A tier for Demolition and the B tier for respawn modes. On screen now for you is going to be the completed tier list for both Demolition and respawn modes respectively. These are going to be really useful for you to refer back to in terms of figuring out what rogues you might want to be playing. As I said, for Demolition specifically, every rogue kind of feels viable right now, so they are all highly rated. You see there's no one in C tier or D tier. That's kind of just because I think all of them are pretty good currently within the game, and respawn modes is a little bit more separation, but again, most rogues can hold their own pretty well. Okay then guys, that takes us to the end of the video, and if you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. You can also come follow me on twitch.tv/RADTHARGAMING, see live gameplay commentaries. I'm also on TikTok, Instagram, and have a second channel, more Radthar, all linked in the description below. For now though guys, I hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, remember, be loyal, be brave, be relentless, and I'll catch you in the next video.